Last time, virtual unknown manager Antonio Andolini took one of the weakest AC Milan squads in history and managed to reclaim the Scudetto. Now he's aiming even higher for the Champions League trophy. Can you bring Milan back to the top of Europe? Stay tuned to find out. Before we dive in, only 4% of you are subscribed, so go ahead and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. The appointment of Antonio Andolini in the summer of 2014 was met with plenty of scrutiny and doubt. His first season began with promise, but ended in a late season collapse, with many claiming that the Italian was out of his depth. However, Andolini silenced any doubt and earned widespread respect inside Italy, after leading Milan to a historic club record 95-point Scudetto win in the 2015-16 season. Now, heading into the summer of 2016, with Milan back atop Italian football, Andolini's focus has shifted. The disappointment of the Europa League semi-final exit to Tottenham left him with a renewed desire to restore Milan's status as kings of Europe by conquering the Champions League. Yet, a seismic shift was looming that would alter the very core of the club. Longtime owner Silvio Berlusconi had been exploring a potential sale of the club for several years. The Italian media tycoon and three-time Italian prime minister had owned Milan since 1986, overseeing multiple golden generations and guiding the club to countless domestic and European trophies. Milan's stock had never been higher after the historic Scudetto, and Berlusconi saw it as a perfect opportunity to step away from the team he had famously rescued from bankruptcy decades earlier. At the start of the summer, Milan officially confirmed a £740 million sale to the Rossoneri Sport Investment Lux, a group fronted by Chinese businessmen Young Hao Li and Han Li. The deal had previously been delayed twice due to funding complications, but a loan allowed the group to meet its financial obligations. For the first time in 30 years, AC Milan was under new ownership. Young Hong Lee would act as the new face of the club's leadership, as he quickly confirmed that Antonio Andolini would remain as the manager. Lee promised significant transfer investment to keep Milan at the pinnacle of Italian football and return the club to European glory. This ambition would be the cornerstone of Milan's newest chapter, as the club embarked on a bold new era, one that promised glory, but would soon test the very foundations of the club and the heart of the city it calls home. The summer of 2016 was a new era for Milan. Back at the top of Italian football, the club now has an ambitious board determined to keep them there. More importantly, they have a manager in Andolini who is determined to re-establish Milan as a European powerhouse. New chairman Lee wasn't just offering vocal support, he backed it up by handing Andolini a new 3-year contract, keeping him at the club through the 2018-19 season. However, the manager was underwhelmed by the lack of significant pay rise in the new deal. Still, the promise of major investment in the squad helped ease those frustrations. Andolini believed if he delivered success on the European stage, the financial rewards would follow. For now, he was thrilled by the ownership's ambition and commitment to the squad improvement, as he had plenty of work to do to compete in the Champions League. The primary area Andolini aimed to strengthen was Milan's lack of quality squad depth, which had hampered them in his first 2 seasons. Andolini was convinced that if Milan had any real ambition to compete on multiple fronts, they needed a deeper squad capable of handling the demands of a long season. He first moved to clear out the deadwood and free up space for new arrivals. Adel Rami was the first to depart, joining Aston Villa for £5 million, while Kazuki Honda followed him to the Premier League, signing for Everton for £10 million. Meanwhile, little-used players like Didac Avila, Suso, and Alex were all shipped off to Sevilla for a combined £11 million. The final departure saw Niang join Udinese for £4.9 million. The first signing of that summer was free agent Pepe, the former Real Madrid centre-back, was expected to replace Alex and provide leadership and experience at the back. To further bolster depth at centre-back, Slobodan Rajkovic was signed from Hamburg for £7 million. A more high-profile addition followed as Kyle Walker arrived from Tottenham for £15.5 million. The English right-back was viewed as a long-term successor to Ignacio Abate, with the vice-captain beginning to show signs of slowing down as age caught up with him. In attack, Portuguese winger Nani joined from Manchester United for £11 million, brought in to provide both cover and competition on the flanks. Yet the most pressing issue was Milan's lack of depth at striker, with Fernando Torres and Alexander Lacazette the only options up front. Supporters were expecting a major signing after Endolini had famously passed on bringing back Mario Balotelli in the previous January transfer window, opting instead for a short-term signing in Yaya Sanogo. This time, however, Endolini delivered. Reports linking Milan to Ciro Immobile quickly gathered steam, as the Italian forward was pushing for a move away from Borussia Dortmund. Milan sealed the deal and got their man for a hefty £25.5 million. And finally, fans were thrilled as club legend Kaká made an emotional return from the MLS side Orlando City for £1.5 million. Persuaded by Endolini to return for one final run, the Brazilian was expected to provide veteran leadership as he aimed to help Milan end his storied career on a high. With a busy transfer window wrapped up, Endolini was content with the squad, confident they could make a serious push in the Champions League. More importantly, he was encouraged by the backing he received from Milan's new ownership. The club ended the summer with a net transfer spend of negative £29.6 million, having invested heavily in the squad and far outspent their sales income, a clear sign of ambition from the top. Tactically, Endolini made a notable shift from the 4-4-1-1 system that had helped Milan break their points record in the previous season. With the new defensive signings, the Italian began experimenting with various three-at-the-back formations, settling on an experimental 3-6-1 system. The season officially got underway with another Supercoppa clash between Milan and Juventus. Just like the previous season, Milan ran out winners in a statement win. Torres and Lacazette continued their strong form from the previous season, demonstrating why they were considered one of the deadliest striking duos in Europe. Yet Juventus fought back to bring the game back to 2-2 before vice-captain Abate scored a 90th minute winner to hand Milan the victory, as Endolini's side opened the season with a trophy, hopefully a good omen for the upcoming season. However, Milan got off to a middling start to the league campaign, going 5-3-0 in the first 8 matches. A dull 0-0 draw at home against Palermo, followed by another frustrating stalemate against Lazio, where Nani squandered a golden chance for a last-minute winner, left Endolini concerned about his team's goal-scoring threat. Those concerns were seemingly quelled after a 1-0 win over Napoli as Torres rediscovered his goal-scoring form. Unfortunately, a training injury left the Spaniard on the sidelines for 8 weeks with a torn calf. Thankfully, the board's investment meant Endolini had Immobile waiting in the wings to replace Torres. Milan would need the Italian as they found themselves in third, 3 points behind surprising league leaders Fiorentina, and just 1 point ahead of the rivals Inter Milan. Meanwhile, Milan finally returned to the Champions League, ironically facing Atletico Madrid, the same opponent from their last appearance in the competition. The Spanish side had embarrassed the Rossoneri in the 2014 round of 16, eliminating them 5-1 in aggregate. This time, however, Endolini was determined to prove that this was the new Milan, ready to challenge Europe's elite. He got his wish after a clumsy Atletico challenge gifted Milan an early penalty and the opening goal, as the Rossoneri never looked back. In a statement win that was heard across Europe, Milan cruised to a 3-0 victory, with club legend Kaká stealing the headlines. The Brazilian who scored Milan's lone goal in the 2014 defeat came off the bench to net twice, reintroducing Milan to the European stage, and it would be an emphatic return as Milan ran through their group as they comfortably finished top of the group, where they progressed to the round of 16 to face Paris Saint-Germain. Back in the league, Milan faced a crucial early season run of fixtures against their main Scudetto rivals, Juventus, Inter, and Fiorentina. First up was a trip to Turin, where Milan looked to ignite their title defense with a statement performance. Just as they had in the Supercoppa, Milan dismantled Juventus. Lacazette opened the scoring with a brilliant solo goal, and a flowing team move ended with Matteo De Sciglio, who was deployed in the midfield within Endolini's 3-6-1 system, beating David De Gea to make it 2-0. Kaká rounded off the performance with a late goal, sealing an impressive 3-1 victory. The momentum carried into the Milan derby, where Endolini doubled down on the 3-6-1 system that had sparked a turn in form. With Torres sidelined, Immobile finally stepped up to the occasion, scoring within just 4 minutes. Goals from Salah and Nani wrapped up a dominant 3-0 win over Inter, with the Rossoneri outclassing their neighbors. The back-to-back wins kept Milan just 1 point behind league leaders Fiorentina, while Juventus and Inter began to falter. With the table tightening, the title race was quickly becoming a two-horse race between Endolini's Milan and an informed Fiorentina. And finally, the top two sides met under the floodlights in Florence, with just a single point separating them. It was a perfect opportunity for Milan to seize control of the title race. But the host struck first. Only 10 minutes in, Josip Ilicic stunned the visitors with an early goal, catching Milan cold and sending a clear message that Fiorentina were no pretenders. They were genuine Scudetto contenders. However, Milan responded with a well-worked move that saw Andrea Poli slot the ball past the keeper to level the match at 1-1. The comeback was completed through Nani, who showcased brilliant footwork in the box before coolly finishing to give Milan the lead. The Portuguese winger had been criticized earlier in the season for his miss against Lazio, but his form had now picked up, with him becoming a crucial part of the attack. Milan looked to have sealed the match when Desciglio popped up with yet another goal to make it 3-1. The fullback was thriving in his new midfield role as Milan rolled through Fiorentina. But with 10 minutes ago, a rash challenge from Abate handed Fiorentina a penalty and a chance to claw back into the game. Up stepped Hulk, but his strike rattled the crossbar and stayed out. Fiorentina missed their opportunity to get back into the game as Milan held firm to secure a crucial 3-1 victory. Despite the statement win in Florence, Milan stumbled to the end of the calendar year, managing just 5 points from the final 4 league matches. Still, the Rossoneri reached the halfway point of the season, clinging on to the top spot on goal difference, with Milan breathing down their necks. Unfortunately for Fiorentina, Milan enjoyed an almost perfect January, collecting 13 points from a possible 15. Their strong run of form was sparked by the return of Torres, who had been sidelined for 2 months with injury. Milan's form gave them breathing room at the top of the table, pulling 3 points clear of Fiorentina and Roma, the latter of whom was finding their form after a slow start. Milan would soon meet Roma at home in a pivotal clash in the title race. But first, Angelini went to the new ownership and requested additional funds to strengthen the midfield, which were granted. The influx of cash saw Yaya Toure signed for £26 million from Manchester City. The aging star had been cast aside by new City boss Pep Guardiola, and Angelini thought he was a perfect fit for the midfield. With the transfer window completed, the winter transfer window slammed shut, and Milan welcomed Roma to the San Siro. Toure would get his debut, starting at the base of Angelini's experimental diamond midfield and his 3-6-1 system. Angelini believed his athleticism and technique would provide a more dynamic lone pivot than Alex Song could. Unfortunately, just half an hour into the match, Toure went down with an injury after jumping for a header, seemingly rolling his ankle on the way down. It was a disastrous start for the new signing, leaving Angelini concerned about the severity of the setback. Fortunately, a moment of brilliance from Salah quickly eased those concerns, as Poli pounced on the rebound from the Egyptian shot to open the scoring. Later, a cleverly executed set-piece routine saw Vertonghen double Milan's lead. The match ended 2-0, with Milan once again dispatching title challengers in commanding fashion. Unfortunately, Yaya Toure's injury proved to be serious, with the Ivorian suffering a broken ankle that would sideline him for 3 months. Angelini faced considerable criticism from both within the club and from the media, with many questioning the heavy spending on what seemed to be an unnecessary addition. Yet Angelini dismissed those concerns, pointing out the board had approved the transfer, and they were comfortable with the finances involved, as he saw no reason to second-guess the move. Still, Milan were preparing themselves for a crucial clash against PSG in the Champions League round of 16, with Angelini determined to show that Milan were genuine contenders. The first leg saw Milan travel to Paris, where they were greeted by 2 familiar faces in the former stars Thiago Silva and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the latter of whom Angelini had previously tried and failed to bring back to the club. Milan's European ambitions took an early blow just 17 minutes in, as PSG carved through the backline with ease, as Lavezzi finished past Diego Lopez to give the hosts a lead. Things quickly went from bad to worse when Kyle Walker mistimed a challenge in the box and conceded a penalty, handing PSG a chance to double their advantage. Up stepped former Milan talisman Ibrahimovic with a chance to sink the club he had once led, but Lopez came up with a crucial save to deny the Swede, keeping Milan's hopes alive. Just a couple minutes later, Milan would win their own penalty thanks to a rash tackle from Verratti. Unlike Zlatan, Andre Schürrle made no mistake from the spot, burying his penalty to level the score, the most important goal of his Milan career so far. Just moments later, a brilliant save from Sirigu denied Matteo Desciglio from putting the visitors ahead. The PSG keeper came to the rescue again shortly after, saving another Milan effort and keeping the score level. Those missed chances would come back to haunt the Rossoneri, with Zlatan playing through Lucas Moura, who finished to restore the French side's lead. The match ended 2-1, leaving Milan with plenty to do in the second leg. Back at the San Siro, Milan needed to overturn the 2-1 aggregate deficit to progress. Unfortunately, their away goal was almost immediately cancelled out after a brilliant piece of play saw Johan Cabaye stun the hosts, widening Milan's deficit even further. Thankfully for Andolini, a solo goal from Lacazette put Milan right back into the tie, making it 3-2 on aggregate. Then another solo effort, this time from Ciro Immobile, leveled the aggregate score, with Andolini's summer recruitments paying off big time. As things stood, Milan had overturned the first leg deficit and the match was heading towards extra time. The night would be defined by solo goals. Vice-captain Abate worked his way into the box and beat Sirigu for the third time, finally giving Milan the lead. He just managed to squeeze the shot past the keeper, who nearly saved it with his foot. The match ended with Milan progressing 4-3 in aggregate, as Andolini proved that his side could compete with an elite European opponent. Milan would match up against Borussia Dortmund in the quarterfinals, the German side having just knocked out neighbors Inter Milan 3-0 in aggregate. The first leg saw Milan leave the San Siro with a 1-0 lead after Alex Song, the most unlikely of heroes, scored a brilliant goal. Milan headed into the Signal Iduna Park with Andolini planning a tactical shift for the Champions League. While the 3-6-1 was effective in the Serie A, it had proven too unstable defensively for the intensity of knockout football. As a result, the Italian manager switched to a counter-attacking 5-3-2 system. The switch couldn't have gone any better for Andolini, as Milan ran out 5-1 victors. Dortmund simply couldn't cope with Milan's devastating counterattack, as the Rossoneri ruthlessly carved open the defense time after time. At the other end, Dortmund struggled to break through Milan's organized back line, resulting in a frustrating night for the hosts. It seemed Andolini had found the perfect system to conquer Europe with, as Milan would match up with Manchester City in the semi-finals. Back in the league, Milan had worked their way back to the top of the table with 6 games left to go, thanks to a record of 6-2-2 since a 2-0 win against Roma at the start of February. The losses came in the form of a shock defeat away to Cagliari and a disappointing 2-1 home loss to Napoli, as Milan appeared to be unfocused after their 5-1 victory over Dortmund. Nevertheless, the striker partnership of Torres and Lacazette reignited, with the duo once again spearheading Milan's title charge. Torres had had a difficult campaign following his early season injury, but the Spaniard was regaining his form, reminding fans why the Torres-Lacazette duo was considered one of the best in Europe last season. Meanwhile, Immobile continued to deliver crucial goals off the bench, providing exactly what Andolini needed in a backup striker. So much so that the Italian was beginning to push Torres for the starting spot. However, concerns in the attack resurfaced after a frustrating 0-0 draw away to Sampdoria, in which Milan were denied by one of the greatest goalkeeping performances in recent memory. The Rossoneri registered 12 shots on target, but were repeatedly thwarted by Vincenzo Ferrillo, who deservedly earned the Man of the Match award. To make matters worse, Alex Song suffered a sprained knee while contesting a header, ruling him out for several weeks. With both primary defensive midfielders now sidelined and young Vertonghen also out after breaking his ankle in training, Andolini was left with serious gaps in his squad at a critical stage of the season. Milan entered their Champions League semi-final clash with defensive injuries piling up, but with a spot in the final at stake, Andolini made a bold decision to rush Yaya Toure back to the bench for a dramatic return to his former home, the Etihad Stadium. Just 2 matches separated Milan from a return to the biggest stage in club football. Andolini stuck with the 5-3-2 formation, deploying Matteo Di Sceglio as a defensive midfielder, with Alex Song unavailable and Toure not fit to start. Just 5 minutes in, Milan's counterattack sliced through Manchester City's defense. Torres laid it on a plate for Lacazette, but the Frenchman was denied by a brilliant save. Moments later, another point-blank stop from Joe Hart kept Man City alive. But Milan would not be denied forever. Lacazette finally found the breakthrough, putting the Rossoneri 1-0 up with a vital away goal. As the hour mark approached, Yaya Toure made his Milan return, and his return to the Etihad, to respectful applause from Manchester City fans. With just seconds left in the game, Kyle Walker set up Di Sceglio for a crucial second away goal. The Italian fullback had been excelling in his new midfielder role, scoring important goals, and none more vital than this one, as Milan now had 1 foot in the final. The return leg at the San Siro saw Milan book their place in the final, with Lacazette's 8th-minute goal securing a 2-1 victory for the Rossoneri. It was a historic moment for Milan, a club once synonymous with the Champions League. This marked their first final since 2007 and offered Andolini a chance to firmly establish himself as one of the top managers in Europe. Milan would face a familiar face in the final in the form of Juventus. In fact, they were gearing up for 3 crucial clashes against the Old Lady. First, they were set to meet in the third-to-last league game at home against Juventus, the Milan set to clinch the title. Meanwhile, they were set to face off in the Coppa Italia final, after Milan had ran through Lazio and Roma to reach the final, setting up a potential treble. Finally, the Champions League final was their third and final clash at the end of the season. If Milan wanted the treble, they were going to have to go through Juventus. The side that Angelini had fought for years to the throne was now the fitting final hurdle between him and football immortality. The first clash between the two sides was a cagey affair, with both teams feeling each other out ahead of the upcoming finals. Unfortunately for Milan, an injury to Salah meant the Egyptian would miss the next few games, weakening the side's attacking threat. Then in the 90th minute, a brilliant ball from Schürrle put Lacazette through on goal, and the Frenchman scored a dramatic last-minute winner to give Milan some breathing room at the top of the table. Yet Milan's lead at the top of the table shrank to just 1 point, heading into a title-deciding final day against second-place Fiorentina. Balotelli's late goal in the Milan derby saw the game end 1-1, while another dramatic late goal saw a heavily rotated Milan side face a shock defeat against 16th place Verona. Milan had the chance to clinch a title before the final day and focus on the upcoming finals. Instead, now they needed a result on the last day to win the Scudetto. Milan welcomed Fiorentina to the San Siro for the most important Serie A match of the season. A win or draw would see the Rossoneri retain their crown, while only a victory would deliver Fiorentina their first Scudetto win since 1969. For Milan and Angelini, it was the first step towards a historic treble. For Fiorentina, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Milan's title defense got off to a perfect start, with De Sciglio scoring yet another crucial goal. The fullback was having a phenomenal season and put Milan up 1-0. Fiorentina weren't going down without a fight, however, as the visitors immediately struck back to make it 1-1. Yet Fiorentina's hopes of a comeback were quickly dashed, as Lacazette scored a simple tap-in for his 11th goal of the season. Finally, their title dreams were officially crushed when De Sciglio scored yet another goal, thanks to a deflection off German defender Taschi. Milan had done it. They had successfully retained the Serie A title, with 1/3 of the treble completed. This time they lifted the trophy in front of their home crowd, with club legend Kaká given the honors of hoisting the Scudetto into the air. However, Angelini's side was well aware that the job wasn't complete yet. Juventus were awaiting them in the Coppa Italia and Champions League finals. Coming just days after the final league match, Milan's legs were heavy, punished by their failure to wrap up the league title earlier, with key players like Torres starting on the bench. Meanwhile, Vertonghen finally returned to give Milan a boost ahead of the final. Juventus came out aggressively, overwhelming the tired Milan side and threatening to put the Rossoneri away early. Thankfully for Angelini, Milan's defense held firm to enter halftime at 0-0, with Diego Lopez recording 5 saves in the first half, along with a crucial piece of defending from Kyle Walker, who denied Morata the opening goal. Just minutes into the second half, disaster struck as Yaya Toure went down with an almost identical injury to the one he suffered earlier in the season. The Ivorian couldn't continue, and Milan were falling apart, barely keeping Juventus at bay, when Morata finally beat Lopez to hand Juventus the lead in the final. Milan were on the ropes and needed a solution fast. Thankfully, a moment of brilliance from El Shaarawy put them right back into the game. It came against a run of play, with Juve growing visibly frustrated by their earlier misses. Their frustration over the missed chances would ultimately come back to haunt them, as Fernando Torres, who was brought on late, scored a winning goal in the 82nd minute with his very first shot of the game. Milan were now 2/3 of the way to the historic treble, celebrating the Coppa Italia triumph. It was beginning to look like a statement to the rest of Italy that Milan were entering a new golden era, one which they intended to stay on top of Italian football for a long time. And finally, it was time for the Champions League final, and the third matchup between the two sides. It'd be an all-Italian affair, fittingly held on home soil at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome. For Milan, they had scraped through against PSG after a dramatic comeback, then proceeded to dismantle Dortmund and brush aside Manchester City on their road to the final. Meanwhile, Juventus' road to Rome saw them edge past Valencia, Real Madrid, and Bayern Munich, all by just a single goal. Both sides head into the final with a week's rest, with Milan boosted by the return of Mo Salah from injury. For Milan, it was a chance at a historic treble and a long-awaited return to the throne as kings of Europe. It was a predictably rough affair, with the two rivals set to battle out yet again, Salah nearly marked his return with a dream goal, but his team effort was easily saved by Buffon. Juventus, however, would strike first, capitalizing on a lapse in concentration from Abate, who lost track of Tevez at the back post. Just like in the Coppa Italia final, Milan found themselves trailing early, forced once again to chase the game. Milan were struggling to find a way back into the game, with their hopes of a treble and a European crown slipping through their fingers. Then a familiar hero emerged. Substitute Nani set up Deschiglio, who once again scored a crucial goal for Milan to put the Rossoneri back into the game. The Italian was arguably Milan's player of the season, and without a doubt it was the most important goal of his career. Then in the dying moments of the game, a counterattack saw Lacazette play through Nani, who was left one-on-one with Bonucci. The Portuguese winger created just enough space to slot the ball past Buffon and finally give Milan the lead. It was too little too late for Juventus, as a full-time whistle blew and Milan were crowned European champions. Juventus were devastated after losing to Milan 3 times in a row. Meanwhile, Anellini had finally returned Milan to the absolute pinnacle of not just Italian football, but European football. Milan were once again kings of Europe, as Abate lifted the trophy into the air and confetti rained down from the sky. Anellini was now considered one of the top managers in all of Europe after achieving the historic treble. Milan became just the second Italian side ever to complete a treble, following city rivals Inter Milan's 2010 triumph under Jose Mourinho. To be mentioned in the same breath as Mourinho was a feat not lost on the Italian manager. Once an unknown figure coaching amateur sides in the small hometown of Corleone, Anellini had come a long way. After being doubted in his first season and earning the respect of his country in the second, his third season saw him etch his name into a pantheon of all-time greats, ensuring he would never be a forgotten manager ever again. As for Milan's end-of-season awards, Deschiglio was deservedly named the player of the season. The fullback was thrust into an unfamiliar role this year and exceeded all expectations, registering 8 goals and 6 assists in 42 appearances. He was an integral part of the squad and consistently stepped up in some of the campaign's most crucial moments. Lacazette was a close contender, finishing with 19 goals and 8 assists, his most productive season to date. He was a key figure throughout the year, as was Torres, who despite his dip in form due to injuries, still ended the season as the team's top provider. Meanwhile, Schürrle, Immobile, and El Shaarawy all played significant roles in Milan's dynamic attack, each contributing to key matches across the campaign. In the league, Milan's successful title defense saw them finish with 84 points. Fiorentina enjoyed their best season in decades, but ultimately couldn't overcome Anellini's treble-winning side. Meanwhile, Roma narrowly edged out Napoli and Inter for their final Champions League spot, and Juventus endured a disastrous campaign, finishing 6th place and 19 points off the top, and suffering heartbreak in 2 separate finals at the hands of Milan. Surprisingly, Roma's Doumbia was named the league's most valuable player after winning the Golden Boot with 22 goals. Fiorentina's impressive second-place finish was fueled by the league's top assist provider, Borja Valero, while Diego Lopez claimed the Golden Glove for the 2nd season in a row with 16 clean sheets. Unsurprisingly, Milan's defense was heavily represented in the team of the season, with Lopez, Deschiglio, and Vertonghen all earning honors, and Lacazette also featured up top alongside Doumbia and Tevez. Heading into the 2017-18 season, and fresh off delivering a historic treble, Anellini requested a new and improved contract to reflect the success he had brought the club. The board agreed and negotiations were officially opened to reward the Italian manager for his success at the club. At the same time, the summer transfer window opened, with Anellini eager to further strengthen an already incredible squad. His top priority was to properly address a defensive midfielder position. Alex Song had been solid but unspectacular, while Yaya Toure was increasingly looking like a poor signing. The Italian manager was facing growing criticism over the move, as the Ivorian had managed just 9 appearances due to 2 significant injuries. To solve the issue, Anellini signed Italian international Marco Verratti for a club record £42.5 million. It was a staggering amount, but Anellini believed Verratti was a perfect fit to serve as a deep-lying playmaker at the heart of Milan's midfield. Meanwhile, the manager was forced to deal with an unexpected transfer request from his number 9, Fernando Torres. El Niño had begun to feel homesick and expressed his desire to return to his boyhood club, Atletico Madrid, to finish off his career. Though disappointed, Anellini ultimately respected the striker's wishes. After all, Torres had scored 47 goals across 2 seasons and played a crucial role in delivering Milan multiple trophies. With Torres returning to Madrid, Ancelotti knew he needed a replacement. While Lacazette and Immobile had enjoyed strong seasons, relying solely on the pair up front wouldn't be good enough going forward. In turn, Ancelotti once again targeted Zlatan Ibrahimovic to strengthen the front line and finally bring him back to Milan. This time, the deal appeared to be nearing completion, with the Swedish forward eager to return to the club. Meanwhile, negotiations on Ancelotti's own contract extension were progressing well, but then, suddenly, reports began to surface that the deal with Zlatan had collapsed. Ancelotti was caught off guard. These were legitimate outlets reporting the news, yet he had received no official word that the transfer had fallen through. Confused, he was soon summoned to an urgent meeting with the club chairman Lee. There, he was informed that due to financial concerns, the club had been forced to pull out of the deal, as well as postpone its contract renewal until the end of the season. Ancelotti was outraged. Not only had the club sanctioned his large spending over the last few years, but they also had promised to renew his contract. Ancelotti felt that given his success, he deserved both a new contract and full transparency regarding the club's financial issues. However, Lee reiterated that the club needed to cut back on expenses to ensure its long-term stability, despite just authorizing a club record transfer. Ancelotti left the meeting even more confused than ever, and now frustrated by the broken promises. Yet his immediate concern remained on the need to replace Torres. The board acknowledged this, but insisted that any new transfers be cheap alternatives. Reluctantly, Ancelotti found himself scrambling before the start of the season, eventually signing Fabio Borini for a low transfer fee of $5.8 million. Ancelotti wanted a starting caliber forward, but was left with nothing but a backup. To make matters worse, Lee refused to sanction any further deals. No loans, no free transfers, nothing. The chairman made it clear that there would be no more spending, telling Ancelotti to find solutions within the club. So Ancelotti was forced to turn to the academy to strengthen the squad further. There he identified 2 brilliant prospects who looked ready to contribute to the first team. The first was a 5'5" Argentine center midfielder named Dario Verdejo. Though lacking physicality, Ancelotti saw potential as a future world-class playmaker in him. His ball control and visions were well beyond his years. Then there was Stanislas Chronicles, a Greek winger with great technical and finishing ability. Both players were far from the finished article and would undoubtedly struggle with the physical demands of top-level football. But with financial restrictions tightening around him, Ancelotti had little choice but to place his faith in the next generation. The season opened up with yet another match between Juventus in the Supercoppa final. In what was a familiar script between the two teams, Juventus struck first before Lacazette equalized for Milan, bringing the match to a tense stalemate. This time, however, Ancelotti introduced some fresh blood into the fixture, handing a debut to Greek wonderkid Stanislas Chronicles. The youngster made an immediate impact, announcing himself to the world with an audacious chip over David De Gea that rattled in off the bar to give Milan the lead. Yet Chronicles wasn't done. He followed up with a second goal to seal the victory and cap off a dream debut. Milan lifted yet another trophy, and the season began with his statement. Before the league season kicked off, Milan faced the Europa League winner Sevilla in the UEFA Super Cup. Sevilla took a shock early lead, giving Milan a serious sense of déjà vu. Just like in last season's match against Sampdoria, the Rossoneri ran into a goalkeeping masterclass, this time from Sevilla's Fernando Muslera. Milan registered 15 shots on target over the course of the match, but the Uruguayan keeper denied them time after time. As the 90th minute approached, with Milan still unable to find a breakthrough, Ancelotti began to worry that the loss of Fernando Torres was already taking the toll on the team's attacking output. Thankfully, Lacazette was on hand to rescue Milan, slotting home a well-placed finish to finally beat Muslera and send the game to extra time. Then, just as the match seemed destined for penalties, young prospect Dario Verdejo slipped a perfectly weighted pass through to Lacazette, who once again beat the Sevilla goalkeeper to clinch the win for Milan. It was a dramatic victory and a perfect start to the season. With 2 trophies already secured, Milan looked poised to build on their historic treble-winning campaign. And most encouragingly for Ancelotti, the youth prospects appeared to be more than ready to step up and make an impact at the highest level. Ancelotti's faith in his youngsters continued to be rewarded, as Chronicles scored in his Serie A debut during the Milan derby. helping the team cruise to a comfortable 3-1 victory on opening day. The Greek wonderkid continued to impress, quickly adapting to life in Serie A and netting 2 more goals in a thrilling 4-2 win over Juventus. It seemed Annalini had a serious talent on his hands. Unfortunately, a rough tackle saw the youngster go down clutching his knee, with many fearing a serious injury. Initial concerns pointed at a potential ACL tear, but an MRI later confirmed that there was no ligament damage. It said Chronicles had suffered a hyperextended knee, which would sideline him for about a month. Chronicles' injury proved to be a bad omen for Annalini's side, as the Rossoneri endured a turbulent first half to the league campaign, finishing with a record of 11-6-2 and sitting in 3rd place at the midway point of the season. They suffered disappointing defeats away to Fiorentina and a 2-1 loss at home to Roma, and were plagued by a growing injury crisis. It began with Nani and Schürrle picking up long-term injuries in training, and it quickly escalated with 5 first-team players sidelined for extended periods. At one point it seemed like whenever one player returned, another was immediately sidelined. Although Milan remained in a decent position, the mounting injuries were threatening to derail any hopes of a Serie A three-peat. The injury crisis saw Milan collect just 14 points from a possible 27 across January and February. The poor run included another defeat to Roma, allowing them to complete the double over Milan for the first time since Annalini's debut season. Fortunately for Annalini, the injury crisis showed no signs of easing. A virtually new set of 5 players were sidelined throughout the 2 months, continuing the cycle of setbacks. Milan's season was beginning to be defined by injuries. After 25 games, they remained stuck in 3rd place, still just 4 points off top. To reclaim the Scudetto, Milan would need a near-perfect run to the end of the season. But with key players still unavailable and Annalini focused on defending the Champions League title, the task ahead seemed almost impossible. Speaking of the Champions League, the injury crisis saw Milan finish 2nd in their group behind Tottenham. While Milan comfortably ran through Ajax and St. Etienne, 2 losses to Tottenham condemned them to the runner-up spot. As a result, Milan were handed a tough round of 16 draw against Premier League champions Chelsea. The stumble in the group stage saw Annalini facing one of the most formidable defenses in Europe, a team that would go on to reclaim the Premier League title by the season's end. Milan went into the clash against Chelsea with a heavily depleted back line. With both Pepe and Vertonghen out injured, Kyle Walker was forced to shift to center back, while aging Abate was brought into the starting lineup. The Italian fullback saw his game time significantly decrease this season, and was now starting in the most important match of the campaign. Milan nearly got off to a perfect start, with Yaya Toure launching a quick counter-attack that ended with Lacazette squandering a golden opportunity to take the lead. The match remained evenly contested, with Diego Costa coming close to scoring twice in the first half. Eventually, Chelsea broke the deadlock. A back post cross eventually found Willian, who tapped in to give their visitors a crucial away goal. A brilliant moment from Oscar caught Lopez completely off guard, leaving the keeper helpless to stop it. Then in the 90th minute, Mo Salah went on an incredible solo run, beating multiple Chelsea defenders before scoring against his former club to equalize at the death. Salah carried his form into the second leg, as another solo run saw the Egyptian score once again against his former side. However, a curling effort from Diego Costa leveled the aggregate score, leaving everything to play for. Then, just like in the first leg, a counterattack sparked by Verratti led to Lacazette scoring and giving Milan the lead on aggregate, and 1 foot in the quarterfinals. More importantly, the second away goal ensured that Chelsea's late equalizer wasn't enough, as Milan advanced on away goals with a 3-3 aggregate score. Milan faced Wolfsburg in the quarterfinals, and the German side suffered the same fate as their compatriots Dortmund had in the previous season. The Rossoneri cruised to a 4-1 aggregate victory, with El Shaarawy scoring twice, and Verratti adding another as the Italian continued his strong campaign. In the semi-final, a blockbuster showdown awaited, as Milan were set to face off against Real Madrid. The 2 most decorated clubs in European history would go head-to-head for a chance to add yet another Champions League title to their illustrious trophy cabinets. In the meantime, Annalini had to refocus his squad on the league as they entered the final stretch of the campaign. 4 wins in March were enough to keep Milan in the title race, with the Rossoneri still 4 points behind Juventus. However, a match against Lazio triggered a disastrous turn of events. A catastrophic own goal from Lopez set the tone, followed by a contested aerial challenge that saw Vertonghen injure his knee, sidelining the Belgian international for a month. Then came controversy as Milan were denied a penalty after a clash in the box while Immobile attempted a shot. The match ended 1-1 and marked the beginning of the end of the title run, as Milan failed to win any of their next 3 matches. Defeats to mid-table Sampdoria, title rivals Napoli, and an embarrassing 1-0 loss to 17th place Pescara saw Milan officially drop out of the title race. Now 10 points off first place, the focus had shifted from chasing the Scudetto to simply securing Champions League qualification. Yet, despite an underwhelming domestic season, Milan were still within reach of reclaiming the Champions League title. Standing in their way, however, was one of the most star-studded teams in Europe, featuring Sergio Aguero up top, flanked by Gareth Bale and Cristiano Ronaldo. If Milan hoped to retain their crown, they would need to leave the Bernabeu with a result. They nearly got off to a perfect start after a trademark Milan counterattack saw Mo Salah come close to putting the visitors ahead just 16 minutes into the game. Moments later, Salah nearly turned provider with a brilliant chip that set up Lacazette, but the Frenchman squandered the opportunity. The missed chances would come back to haunt Milan, as Cristiano Ronaldo put the hosts ahead with a clinical finish. Perhaps the best player in the world was showing Milan exactly how not to waste opportunities. The game remained finely balanced, with both sides registering 5 shots apiece halfway through the match, as Europe's 2 most storied clubs battled out for a place in the final. Then a reckless challenge by Toni Kroos handed Milan a golden opportunity to level the score. Lacazette stepped up and calmly converted the penalty, securing a vital away goal at the Santiago Bernabeu. Then, in the dying moments, Poli played Lacazette through with a chance to win it at the death, but he missed. Yet another wasted opportunity saw a crucial away victory slip through Milan's fingers. They left the Bernabeu with an important away goal, but they knew they had squandered a major opportunity to leave with more. Milan entered the second leg with a sense of uneasiness, as fans nervously hoped the team could hold on to their slim away goal advantage. But after just 4 minutes, those fears were realized as Sergio Aguero blasted a shot off the crossbar, immediately wiping out Milan's first leg result. Things only got worse from there, as Ciro Immobile was forced off early due to an injury. Yet another blow in a season riddled with injuries. The depleted Milan side barely put up a fight, as Aguero eventually sealed a 2-0 victory for Real Madrid. Milan were sent crashing out of the Champions League. Their hopes of reclaiming the European crown were now dead and buried. Despite the setbacks, a determined Milan managed to finish the league campaign with 9 points from a possible 12, with the only loss coming in the final day against Inter. This solid run was enough to secure the Champions League qualification spot, well below the season's original expectations, but still a crucial achievement for the club. However, there was still a consolation prize for Milan. They found themselves in the Coppa Italia final and once again facing Juventus. The route to the final had been relatively smooth, with a 2-0 win over rivals Inter being the only challenging match along the way. It was an opportunity for Milan to salvage some pride and end a difficult season on a high note. Andolini's men entered the final focused and determined to end the season with silverware. Yaya Toure captained the side, having enjoyed a bounce-back year with a clean bill of health. Meanwhile, Andolini gave starts to both Verdejo and Curides, offering a glimpse into Milan's future. Milan got off to a blistering start, with Kyle Walker setting up Lacazette for the opening goal. Just moments later, the captain for the day, Yaya Toure, made it 2-0 to give Milan a dream start. Despite an overall disappointing season, they were dismantling the champions and sending a clear message. They'd be back stronger than ever next year. Verdejo nearly capped off the perfect performance with a free kick that rattled the crossbar. The match ended 2-0 and Milan closed out a turbulent campaign with a trophy. For the second consecutive year, Milan were Coppa Italia champions, once again beating Juventus in the final. For a moment, the team could forget the struggles of the past season as they celebrated another trophy under Andolini. It had been a tough and grueling season, but Andolini believed Milan were finally back on the right track. With the Coppa Italia trophy secured, Champions League qualification achieved, and promising youngsters breaking into the first team, the foundations were in place for a strong resurgence. Andolini was eager to get back to work and lead Milan back to the summit of Italian football.
Shock coming out of the San Siro as treble-winning boss Antonio Andolini has been sacked. This comes just days after Milan's Coppa Italia triumph. It's understood that the Italian manager was blindsided, having already begun preparing for the new season. Sources close to the club suggest deepening financial issues as the primary reason behind the decision. Stay with us, as an official club statement is expected in the coming hours.
Andolini has just been sacked. The footballing world was stunned, as was Andolini himself. A treble winner, it is almost unthinkable that he'd be let go, even after what was considered a disappointing season by his usual high standards. No one had anticipated such a drastic move, especially after everything he achieved for Milan. As it turned out, Milan were facing serious financial instability. Chairman Lee had been struggling to meet the financial demands of his ownership and had begun defaulting on loan agreements. The club's treble-winning season had temporarily masked a mounting financial strain, but eventually, Lee grew desperate and began cutting costs in a last-ditch effort to retain control of the club. It became clear that Lee had been halting transfer activity not because of lack of ambition, but because he simply couldn't afford to spend any more money. And in one final desperate act, he sacked Andolini in an attempt to claim the power. And so, Andolini's time in Milan had come to an end. He was heartbroken. He had poured his heart and soul into the club, a place that had become his second home, where he had made a name for himself and grown to love deeply. And now it was over, not because of his own failings, but due to someone else's mismanagement. He would go on to return to his original home in Corleone, Sicily, retreating to his vineyard in the countryside. Naturally, there were many suitors eager to bring him in, Juventus among them, along with several top clubs from abroad, but Andolini had no interest. His footballing home would always be Milan. He had no desire to live anywhere else but his hometown and his adopted city. At this stage of his career, he couldn't imagine starting over somewhere new. Despite the sense of unfinished business, he couldn't bring himself to move on. His heart would always remain in Milan, but that doesn't mean that it would always bleed red. That's right guys, Andolini ain't done yet, so stay tuned for part 3 of this save. And make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 3. Thanks guys.